Welcome to our weekday text gathering. Today is day 149 in the Circles reading calendar, and we are studying chapter 11, section 8, the real world. This section contains the course's introduction to what it calls the real world, which is one of the most beautiful concepts in the whole book. And yet, strangely, it is one that we don't hear about very often. So I think that you're really going to enjoy the discussion today. In the FIP edition of the course, this is the content that appears in this section mostly appears in a section called the condition of reality. So I'm so glad that the real world has its own section in the CE, and by extension, the idea of the real world is elevated accordingly. So if you are unfamiliar with the course's definition of this phrase, then get ready because it will really melt your heart. One very important announcement, as we have all discovered today, is that the link for this gathering is going to change. So today in an email, you will receive a new link for these gatherings and a new password. So tomorrow, the link that you're currently using will not work. So if you'd like to continue with us, it's very important that you be on the lookout for an email from us with the new meeting ID and password. So for our prayer today, Helen, in her book, The Gifts of God, has a beautiful poem called, coincidentally, The Real World, and I would like to read that to you. So if you like, you are welcome to close your eyes or not and take in the beautiful words of Helen and Jesus in this poem called The Real World. Where stars are formless, but their light remains and shines forever. Where the sun has lost its burning heat, and yet it still retains a gentle and eternal glow that keeps all things in peace and softness. And the rays from every living thing reach out to find all other living things, and on from them to their creator. Where when petals fall and leaves decay, the scent and color of the flowers come, preserved forever fresh and lovely. And the song of birds remains, although their wings are still. Here everyone will come to rest, his journey almost done, and hears God acknowledging his Son. I'll make you host, Robert.
Okay.
And
that's a beautiful poem.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah.
So many amazing poems in this book. If you do not own it, please get it.
That's really beautiful. I mean, unfortunately, on my audio, you cut out a couple of times.
Oh, really?
But it was still really beautiful.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it was great. Okay, so let me share my screen. This is the section that introduces the term, the real world. And like Emily said, we don't talk about it that much in course circles, but I wish we did. It's a beautiful concept. There's a lot to it. As it gets revisited throughout the course, different elements get added into it. In this beginning discussion of it, there's one main element focused on. So that's what I'll focus on here. What does the term mean? What is the real world? This is not just a course term, right? When you might have a child, and you may see them go from, the protective nest of their parents' care, and then go out and have to face what we call the real world, right? And what we mean by that is the world as it really is, without any disguises, without any veneers. Things are hard, right? It's not just, things are not just given to you on a platter. So the course is using the real term, the real world, in the same sense of it's what's really out there, but the Course just sees what's really out there in very different terms. So what does it mean to see what's really out there? It means that in what the Course sees as an unreal world, it means to see those elements that reflect true reality and are therefore the most real aspects of this world. I think we are doing that all the time. We're just not doing it the way the Course would have us do. We're always deciding what elements of a situation are worth paying attention to, because they're the key as to what's really going on here, what's real here. So have you noticed that over time, with the exact same person, you can focus on different things in their behavior because you've decided that those things are the key to what's real in them, and they can change because your view of what's real in them changes. So when you first meet, it might be little kind gestures. After 30 years, it's like all those really annoying habits, right? Because you see them now as the key to your new picture of what's real. So how does the Course see that process of selectively attending to what's real in this world? We see this in paragraph 2 of this section. What then is the world that awaits your perception when you see, which implies we aren't really seeing right now? Every loving thought that the Son of God ever had is eternal. Those which his mind perceived in this world are the world's only reality. They are perceptions because he still believes that he is separate. Yet they are eternal because they are loving. And being loving, they are like the Father because God is love, and therefore will not die. So the things in this world that reflect true reality and are in some sense eternal are, as he says, the loving thoughts. And this is a theme that runs throughout the Course. We should focus on the loving thoughts, look for the love that passes between us and others, or passes between others out there in the world. Remember the love from the past. Realize that even if a relationship is over, that only the love was real in that relationship. So this reflects a total focus throughout the Course of seeing only the loving thoughts. And that means seeing the goodness out there, seeing the love out there, and not seeing the rest. Both of those parts are important. Paragraph 3 says, the real world can actually be perceived. All that is necessary is a willingness to perceive nothing else. Meaning only the loving thoughts, not perceive the rest. The perception of goodness is not knowledge, knowledge being the awareness in heaven, but the denial of the opposite of goodness, denying the evil, enables you to perceive a condition in which opposites do not exist. So in the real world, we realize only the love, only the goodness is real. The opposite of that isn't real, and that prepares us for a state in which there are no opposites, because only one thing, only the good, only the love is real. Now, whenever I dip my toe sort of outside the Course, I hear a lot of this these days, that we have to realize the good and the evil, they're both relative. They're twin sides of the same thing. And we need to go beyond both to the non-dual state that's beyond evil and beyond good. Okay? Sounds so wise, so spiritual. I've heard very enlightened people say that. I can barely think of a teaching that was more contrary to the Course. That is just not where the Course is coming from. You have to make a choice. From the Course's standpoint, the good in this world, okay, it's not ultimately real, but it's the window onto what is ultimately real. It's the only thing in this world that is that window, because in ultimate reality, there is pure goodness, pure love, without limit, without ending. So what this naturally brings up for me is like, how can I reach this place realistically? Because this sounds like we're supposed to go around engaging in flat out denial, doesn't it? You know, I don't see this person's sick. I don't see this system's corrupt. I don't see, I'm just like, yeah, it's all wonderful, man. Um,
Listening.
right, right. Ken Wapnick loved that phrase, bliss ninny, or that term. So what came to my mind is I've been going through these three options over the course of decades uh, in relation to this idea of the real world, sort of three different worlds. And I think that we probably can relate. Not that I'm there with the third option, the real world, but I've set my sights there. I know that's the goal. Okay, so I thought just my own journey with this might help you, process your journey. So, and Emily, feel free to throw in here, obviously, anywhere along the way, because I'm sure you've gone through a pretty similar journey. Number one, the world is basically good and makes sense. I remember how it looked to me as a kid. It's like the adults obviously had it figured out, and they'd constructed a world that was governed by these just rules, and everything was basically fair. It all made sense. And yeah, there were some people that broke the rules, but they always got caught. So it's kind of dumb to break the rules in the first place. And every story you saw on TV or read about in fiction kind of reinforced that, yeah, it makes sense. And the rule breakers, they get caught. And that's why we have detectives. And, that's why we have Sherlock Holmes, etc. And then what happened was life experience and A Course in Miracles basically sent me down the road to number two. The world is a jungle, as Tennyson said, red in tooth and claw. And what happened, I think, was just life experience. You kind of realize, you know what? It's a lot more crazy and chaotic and a lot less sensical than you assume as a kid, or at least I assumed as a kid. And then what the Course did was it showed me how egos work. And the more I understood the theory of how egos work, the more I saw that at work in me, and I saw it at work in everybody, and I saw it at work in collectives. And over decades, I'm peeling off the disguises, all the nice masks, all the happy propaganda, all the advertising, and everything's advertising. Even the flowers are advertising. Everything's putting on this nice form to trick you into thinking it's really nice. But as I peeled off all the advertising, I just slowly realized that the main institutions, government, business, science, education, you could go on, they're not driven by the ideals they say they're driven by. It's more just egos contending. And some egos end up winning and getting more egos on their side, but it's really to serve their own interests. And because that reflected the Course's picture of the ego, I thought I'm getting the bottom of what's actually going on. I'm getting the bottom of the real world. When actually my real world is just what we all say when it's like, yeah, now you're out, you have to leave home. You got to face the real world. My real world was the same as that, not particularly enlightened, even though it felt like refreshing, embracing, and true and all that. And slowly, especially over the last, several 5-10 years, I've been realizing, oh, wait, just exulting in peeling off the disguises and seeing the corruption is not exactly where the Course is leading us. I think we all.
So I was going to say, it's interesting that the Course brought you to that perspective in the first place, because it's pretty negative.
It's kind of negative. Yeah. Like seriously negative. So what I finally kind of put together is, okay, the Course, if I saw with, the eyes of Christ in me, or the spiritual eye, I would be seeing this glorious world full of love. And what I've slowly been coming to is, and it sounds very simple, but I think in the actual, embodying of it, it takes a lot of working out of polarities. So where we're heading, I believe, is we realistically see the forms out there and what they're doing and why they're doing it. We don't have any illusions on that level. They're driven primarily by ego. It's a mess, it's a jungle, okay? But we focus on the love because the love is the only thing that is real and that endures. That's what's real.
Robert,
It's the window. Yeah.
can you make me the host, please?
Yeah, sorry. Hang on, how do I do that? So you made me the host? Oh, to share my screen.
Right.
Of course. Okay.
Now I need to mute.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we focus on the love, not because it's the majority of what's going on, not because love gave birth to all the systems out there and all the lives and all the cities and towns and countries and all that, but because however much it's a spark, it's what's real. It's the window onto what's eternally real in general, and it's the window onto what's real in the people that are doing the loving things. So that's kind of where, you haven't found that person yet. That's kind of where I'm trying to head, and I've been trying to head. That is so loud.
Yeah, Mary, it's Mary Berry. And
okay.
It won't let me mute from here for some reason.
She's muted now.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, okay. Now, I think that, the journey from 1 to 2 to 3, it may not be as simple as just going from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. We can hang out in 1. We can, hang out in 2 forever. People do, especially people who have a kind of an activist bent. We can try to juggle 1 and 2, combine them, go back and forth between them. But in the journey, we have to realize, for me, it's been 2 big things. One is that 1 is not 3. It's really easy to think number 1 is number 3. And 2 is that 2 is not the Course's perspective. Like for years, I just felt like, yeah, 2 is it. Okay, I know it sounds dumb, but that's where I was. 2 isn't the Course's perspective. It's the perspective of, yeah, what the forms are doing, but not what's really out there. It's not the real world. So those 2 things are big traps. Thinking that number 1, if we're just kind of pie in the sky, and yeah, everyone's really nice, it's all really wonderful, and everyone means well, everyone's doing their best. No, they aren't doing their best. They're not. No one has hurtful intentions. Their intentions, if they have bad intentions, it's because they don't really understand what they're doing. But their intentions are bad. They are.
Robert, is this where you would also put those who say you don't have to pay attention to what's going on in the world because it's all an illusion anyway?
That's a special kind of variation, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not sure where that fits in my scheme. I'll probably come up with an answer to that after class is over. But yeah, it's another variation on where to land with all this.
Feels like it would go in that first bucket, is because it's a way of rejecting the world through withdrawing from it completely.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, but that is a variation. That is a camp you can spend a lot of time in. So I just think, to the extent we can, let's set our sights for the actual number 3. So surely, Emily, you've got things to add here.
Well, the thing that's coming to me is that I wanted you to have 4 points on this.
I know you did.
because I think there's a middle ground between 2 and 3, and it's that place where,
I've got it down here, though.
As you mentioned, we're trying to have it both ways. I mean, the section even says we try and see some good, but never only good. And that's where I think the majority of us are. I don't think the majority of us withdraw from the world by blistening out, and I don't think the majority of us are so pessimistic as to think, well, it's just a jungle out there and it's so cruel that I'm not even going to engage with it either. So I think we try and have it both ways. We see good but not only good, we see bad but not only bad, and the journey in my mind is from 3 to 4, if 3 is that on the fence place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did try to include your fourth option in the fine print here,
Right.
in the footnote. But anyway, I just want to make a point. I think you can withdraw or engage in one. You can totally engage under number 1, because you can be like doing all the bake sales and really happily engage with the world because it's all so sunny. And you can engage with number 2 or withdraw. Like in number 2, you can totally engage as an activist, right? Trying to change the corrupt world and, steer the ship. But you can also withdraw. So I think that you can do different things within, I mean, these are really broad categories that have many variations.
We do have questions if you want to
Yeah,
take them before the
let's do them.
exercise.
Yeah.
So Jeff is asking, is the real world the happy dream?
I think it basically is. The happy dream is a term the Course hardly ever uses. And when it does use it, it's talking more about a state of mind. That it sounds like it's about a happy life situation, but that's not how the term's used in the Course. It's more used as a state of mind. I think the real world and the happy dream are more or less, they're at least very similar terms. But the happy dream, I think we should probably just not use that very much, because the Course doesn't.
I always thought the happy dream was what we make of the world when we see it differently, which feels similar to the real world. But if you think about the real world as the way it's described in this section, where only the loving thoughts are true, only the love that you shared with someone, even if the relationship ends, remains, that feels different to me than the happy dream.
But the happy dream, as you just described it, is the thing I'm saying we all think it is, but that's not how the Course talks about it.
Okay.
It's talked about more as a state of mind than as the dream outside of us being happy.
The rain is asking, is the love coming from the separate self? Where is the love coming from? That
Well,
remains.
yeah, I mean, we're not actually separate. We're not actually human. We're not egos. We're all sons of God who are dreaming we're something else. So love is natural to us. Love is what we produce when we're being more ourselves. So it comes from us, from our real nature, and it's the sign, it's the visible evidence of who we really are.
Robert, do you know anything about the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
So Sheila is asking, could you please share your thoughts on the Mandela effect and the world?
Yeah. It's the Mandela effect is where lots of people remember a very well-known thing differently than it is. And people who believe in the Mandela effect, they believe that the masses of memories that people have, like lots of people remember where Nelson Mandela, I think, like he never becomes president, or he never gets out of prison, or something where it's all a whole different timeline. And tons of people swear they have the same detailed memories that never happened, according to our timeline. So this is evidence of a different timeline, like alternate timelines. And I don't know what to make of that. What I've read about it has left me unconvinced. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not sure how significant it is. It is very interesting. And if it were proven true, that'd be fascinating. But what I've read so far doesn't do much for me.
We do have a lot of questions. I'm not sure we'll be able to get to all of them, but Catherine is asking, how is it that we focus on the love and only the love?
Well, I think, our ego wants to focus on the other. All the body's misbehaving, all the corruption and the lies and the attack and the exploitation out there, something in our ego feasts on all that. At least my ego does. And we need to have a commitment that says, A, only the love is real, and B, that's the feast I want to have. There's a really great section in the Obstacles to Peace in chapter 19 that talks about these two different feasts. There's the feast of fear and the feast of love. And the feast of love happens when we kind of let the angels in our minds go and gather all the evidence of love out there, and that becomes our feast. And the feast of fear is when the dogs of fear go out through our eyes and look for all the negative and bring it back, all the rotting flesh, as the section says, and bring it back. And that becomes our feast. I mean, which feast do you want?
Before we get to the exercise, Jeannie says, could you expand on the idea of non-duality in the Course, and thinking particularly about paragraph 4 in this section, which says the condition of knowledge is a condition in which opposites do not exist?
Yeah, well, non-duality is a really big buzzword these days, both outside the Course and within the Course community. But it's a word that can mean a lot of different things. I don't use it because the Course doesn't use it. But if I were to use it, I would probably be specifying what variety of non-duality I mean. And I think one of the most important distinctions to make, oftentimes with non-duality, we're told, yes, good, evil, light, darkness, they're the dualities. We got to transcend both into non-duality. And like I say, I cannot imagine something more contrary to the Course. The Course sees, yes, there's only one, but that one is good without opposite, light without opposite, love without, it's just goodness, light, love, truth. So that in a world of duality, the good, the love, the light, they are the only things here that are real, that reflect reality. So rather than saying good, evil, it's all part of duality, none of them are ultimately real, we need to say, no, one of those is the window onto what's ultimately real and is the only thing real in this world. And it's a totally different approach to non-duality.
Okay, we do the exercise. We're already at the half hour.
Yeah, we are.
Gosh,
Well, we
are past the
started
half hour mark.
super late. Just saying. Yeah, I don't know how that happened with our Zoom link. That was kind of weird.
I do. That's not worth going into.
Okay.
That's why we're getting a new link tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead and please close your eyes and get comfortable. And in your mind's eye, let your mind roam over the world, seeing what's there. And while it roams, look for the loving. Look for the goodness. For instance, the Course says, a brother smiles upon another, and my heart is gladdened. So see an instance of that happening in the world. Keep looking. The Course says someone speaks a word of gratitude or mercy, and my mind perceives this gift and takes it as its own. So see someone speaking a word of gratitude or a word of mercy. Keep looking. The Course says, and everyone who finds the way to God becomes my Savior, pointing out the way to me. So see an instance of that, someone finding God, either in a momentary experience or permanently. And now collect up all the instances of love and goodness that you found while your mind roamed over the world. Collect them all into one beautiful shining pile and say to yourself, in a world of illusion, only this is real. And say, in a world of time, only the love is eternal. Now try to imagine what the world would look like if you saw it in light of only that shining pile in front of you, in light of only the love. That love was the only useful commentary on the whole thing. What would the world look like? Wouldn't you prefer that that be the world you live in? Wouldn't you prefer that that be the world that is real? Amen.
Robert, before we go, for those of you who
Yeah.
have to drop off, as always,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
feel free. We are over time, but there's 3 questions in the chat that I'd
Sure.
like to pose to you if we can do a bit of a speed round
Yeah.
before we go. Jeff is asking, is the next step, whether you have 3 or 4 steps in this process,
We'll have to
so,
hash that out over the next years.
is the next one heaven?
After the real world?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. From the Course's standpoint, when you see only the real world, purely that's it, then you'll see it for like a split second. And then God will translate your mind into the state of knowledge forever, like permanently.
John is asking, can we see the real world here, the beauty in nature, for example?
From the Course's standpoint, seeing the real world has to do with focusing on the love rather than physical beauty. And it also has to do, as we'll see later on in other discussions of the real world, with seeing with spiritual eyes past the forms, seeing with what the Course calls vision. That's not talked about in this section, but that's a big part of the real world going forward. But yeah, the Course is not too big. It wants to see the beauty of love expressed, which it considers to be more of a real beauty than the physical beauty of nature. I mean, nature's great as long as you don't think about what everything's doing to each other out in nature, and as long as you're protected from all of it because you're part of a species that has basically subjugated the whole natural world to its needs. Otherwise, nature's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it is like you can look at a praying mantis, for example, and think of how beautiful and exquisite it looks, and then you realize it's just eating the head off of its mate, and that's what
Right.
we do in nature.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched so many nature documentaries, and they're part of what got me to that second world. It's like, oh, right, that's
It
how it
really is
works.
dog eat dog.
Yeah, it totally, like literally.
So, sorry, I said 3 questions, and now I'm going to make it 4. And Anita says,
Of course you are.
how do we operate in the real world? Like, if you're inspired by this idea, what do you do? And then I guess I'll just marry that with the last question because it's related. I think it's who's saying that she's just looking around and not seeing much love. And so if you're looking around not seeing much love and you're inspired by this idea and you want to be part of it, what do you do?
Well, I think, the main focus in the Course, I would say, is to actively look for the love and act like it's the thing, it's the gem worth finding, right? I mean, gems are often hard to find, but because we consider them precious, we expend a lot of resources looking for them. And then what do you do? Like, how do you, what was the other question?
What do you do? How do you, if you're inspired by this idea and you think, you get up in the morning and you think, I want to see the real world, what's next?
Yeah, I guess that's probably the main answer the course would give is train your mind to look for the good.
Yeah, and you answered that in your commentary this morning, where you mentioned that I'll remind you of what you were, that up until now we've been focused so much on overlooking errors, but we haven't been told what to focus on. And so if you're inspired by this idea and you want to be part of bringing it into your everyday, then reject what is false and focus on what is good, and that is the love and nothing else.
Right. And watch where your mind hangs out. Does it hang out with, what's wrong with that person and what's wrong with that person? Or does it hang out with what's with the love that that person has displayed?
Yeah.
And that's a very practical issue.
Yeah. This is just such an incredibly beautiful concept. I think you and I were talking this morning about when you look back at all the relationships that you've had up until this point, not just the royal you, like all of our, yes, you referred to the idea of bodies in the road. So many things are broken, marriages end, children are estranged, and friends come and go. And when you think, gosh, no matter how it ended, only the love remains, then it just allows you to be in a place where healing is always possible. But as you're looking back on it, you're not holding it so heavy. In fact, you're holding the memory more lightly, and that could in fact be the thing that makes healing possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I just want to point out, I've mentioned this before, they've actually done experiments that when people see acts of kindness or people being loving, it actually creates more kindness and loving in them, that they just tend to go in that direction. So like you said, when we look for it and find it and see it, then it works.
Yeah. And that's exactly what the course says. So there's so many ways in which social science research is 50 years later backing up a bunch of claims in the course.
And NDEs are also backing up
Yeah.
claims in the course. We see that all the time too.
It's way ahead of its time.
Someone has
way
some
ahead.
extraordinary experience and they're not even a course student, but what they're saying completely is in alignment with what you read in the pages of the course. So it's incredible. Okay, so we are running very late. Thank you.
Everyone's ready to go.
Well, you can drop off at any time. Like I said, we're home. So thank you for joining us. We will see you tomorrow, and please be on the lookout for that new link. Bye for now, everybody.
We're never in a rush.
Thank you. Thank you.